Welcome. My name's Stephanie Overman. I'm the Society of Professional Journalists Region 2 coordinator. I'm working with the international community on this. As we start, please type in the chat and let us know where you're from so that we can kind of learn that as we go along. Our guest today, Ghada Oueiss, and we'll be talking a lot about the problems with harassment and bullying, cyberbullying of journalists. But let's start with the housekeeping. The international community of the Society of Professional Journalists, community of journalists that encourages press freedom globally. The aim with the talks is to connect journalists at a time when it's difficult to do so in person, as we all know. So these one-on-one conversations, we hope to dig in a little deeper and create an opportunity to have direct access to our guests. And we hope you will learn and grow with this. We're recording this and we will be posting it for Society of Professional Journalists members who couldn't join us. We'll talk about this, ask questions as we go along. You can do those in the Q&A or in the chat feature. Once we have your questions, we can unmute you so that you can ask guests directly, or if you prefer, let me know, and I'll ask the question. So that's the housekeeping. Please let us know where you're signing in from. Our guest today is Ghada Oueiss, and she is a principal anchor presenter for Al Jazeera Arabic. She previously worked for a number of Lebanese newspapers, television channels, and radio stations, and has more than 2 decades in broadcast journalism. She specialized in running tough investigative interviews and has delivered field coverage of several political stories from combat areas and war zones. In a recent op-ed for the Washington Post, she discussed the recent cyber attack against her on social media. And that's something we will really want to get into and plan to explore. And I believe that the op-ed will actually be posted so you can see it. But what I'd like to start with, please, is to get a little of your background in journalism, how you came into it. And I think what I would like to see is, do you see this bullying and harassment? Do you see a crescendo? You know, was it there from the beginning? Has it gotten worse? Where did you start? And how did you build to that? Did they build to that?
Okay, I'm used to the fact that when you choose this job to be a journalist, the fact that I'm Lebanese and I started my career in Lebanon, I knew for a fact that I will be harassed. But back then, when I started my career, I started it in Lebanon, and Lebanon was governed by the Syrian regime had a lot of power on Lebanon. So even though I spent my childhood during the Civil War, and I know for a fact that when you are a journalist in such a region and in a country like Lebanon, you will risk your life, of course, and you will be harassed. First by the militias who are armed, and if you say anything that they might not like, they will threaten you. This is what they did to my father because he was against violence. And he used to tell, the young men in my family, don't take arms and don't go to war because this means nothing. You shouldn't choose violence. You should choose to be well informed, and you should choose dialogue if you want to finish this war, this civil war. And this did, the militias, and even in my own family, young men didn't like what my father used to say, that you should search for the truth and you should be well informed rather than take the violence choice. So he was harassed, he was bullied. He was just a man who worked for the Ministry of Health. So he's not a politician, he's not a journalist, and yet he was harassed because he was objective. He didn't take any side. He was always unbiased, objective, and he used to, refuse violence. So I grew up refusing violence and searching for the truth, because this is what my dad used to do. And it's all about education. And my mother always used to say that I am a curious person, that I ask lots of questions, that I'm an annoying child because I always ask questions as if all the answers are not enough for me. So when I reached the university, she said, you should be a journalist. So my family, you know, encouraged me in the first place to be a journalist, although I didn't want to be a journalist, because deep down I knew that if I'm gonna be a journalist, I'll be harassed and bullied. And I hated politics because I'm a child who was risen in, during the war. And I heard my father saying politicians are all liars or corrupted, etc., etc. So I didn't want to work in a field where I will follow politics, because I knew it's something, you know, it could be violent, it could be annoying, it could be hard or violent. But I ended up studying journalism, and I was really raised on being objective, because, you know, during the Civil War, everybody was following some politician or a faction or a party, or everybody was with someone. Everybody was, you know, following this religion or this faction or this party. But my family was not like that. My father was so objective and unbiased. And I think I was truly affected by that. I didn't realize that, but now, because now when I see the whole Middle East around me, everyone is following this policy or that policy, and I see myself objective, you know, just being objective, just searching for the truth as a journalist. I was asking myself why I wasn't following this policy or this politician. I only found one answer. I was raised to be objective and to search for the truth, and to, you know, and I wanted to stop the corruption, and I wanted people to be well informed, to decide, to take decisions, good decisions for their own interest. Because I saw my cousins killed. I was 3 years old when I saw my cousin getting killed because he chose the war. I have nightmares till now about his funerals, because he was 19 or 20 or 90-year-old. He came back in a black bag where he was killed because he wanted, he was a part of a militia, armed militia. And my father was against that. And he said, you shouldn't choose violence. You should choose for good information, right information. You should choose to be well informed, and you should choose dialogue with your partner in the same country. So when I started, when I finished school and I studied journalism, I was, you know, this is the education I had, the mentality I had, that I should serve the public opinion in a very honest way, and I should serve peace and objectivity and information, not disinformation. And I knew for a fact that I will be bullied and harassed, but not to that extent, because I saw my father, how he was harassed, although he wasn't a journalist. But also after I started to study the journalism, while I was in the university, I saw how the Syrian regime was harassing journalists in my country. And soon as I finished the university and I started to work, and then back in 2005, I started to see how the explosions were following the journalists in the Arab world, in Lebanon. And then after that, you had the Arab Spring. So you can watch how this whole region is, where is it going? And the first victim in this region after the people who are killed by wars is the truth. The first victim killed after killing children and civilians was killing the truth, because this is the corruption, this is the corrupted politicians, and this is also how the region is working now. And it's not new, it's, you know, this is the history of the region, and I am, as a journalist, a part of this history. So what was impressive is that I thought that I will cover these events from Lebanon to the whole Middle East. I didn't imagine that I will be myself in the news, because when they started to attack me, when governments started to attack me as a person, as a journalist, that was really, for me, I cannot say a surprise, but it was shocking because it was increasing. I knew that I will be harassed or bullied, but I didn't know that one day I will write something for Washington Post, or I will talk to you right now because I am severely harassed, that the whole world is interested to know what happened with me. I didn't imagine that I will reach, or they will reach that kind of harassment that will make the whole world know about my story with them. So I thought it will be a local harassment. I will talk about it on my social media, or I will, for example, tell the management Al Jazeera that I need protection, or maybe that I should take care of myself when I travel. I didn't know that it will, one day will come and I will talk to you about this experience. I didn't know it will be that huge. It will reach Washington Post or New York Times or Middle East Eye, you know, the Western media also. At a point, I wasn't surprised if it was still local, because my father went through this, and other objective journalists, good journalists in Lebanon, weren't only harassed, but they were also killed. You know, they killed Samir Qasir, they killed Gibran al-Tuwaini, and before that, during the civil war, the Syrian regime was accused of killing Salim al-Lawzi. I wasn't born yet, and because of you know, reading about him, I had nightmares, because they put his hand, the same hand in which he used to write his articles, they put it in the acid. They made him a message for other journalists. So I know journalists in the Middle East, in Lebanon, they can risk their life. And in Lebanon, not because of the Lebanese government, but because of the power who is controlling the Lebanese government. And I mean here the Syrian regime, or even the Israeli occupation. You know, Lebanon has too many enemies. So if you want to be a good journalist in Lebanon, you might risk your life, not because you don't have press freedom, but because the country is open to all kinds of interference, and they can get you and they can kill you in Lebanon. Again, any secret agent in the world can attack you in Lebanon, because Lebanon is open to all of these interference and interventions. But when I came to Al Jazeera and worked from Qatar, the country itself is safe, but it's not safe at all to work for Al Jazeera itself, because Al Jazeera shocked the governments, the Arab governments and the dictatorships in the region, and they did everything they can, and they still are, to shut Al Jazeera. And you know, even the blockade against Qatar was because of Al Jazeera, or mainly because of Al Jazeera. They had any other accusations, but they wanted to close Al Jazeera. And each time they attack Al Jazeera, I'm the first person to be attacked in Al Jazeera, because of the role that Al Jazeera is making, because it's the only platform in the Arab world and in the Middle East that is not, you know, governmental pro-dictatorship. It has a certain, a certain press freedom, a certain level of professionalism. I mean, that we can make. I can be a good journalist in Al Jazeera, and those governments, they don't want a good journalist. They don't want professional journalists. They just want pro-governments, pro-dictatorship media. And they, they did control all the media in the Arab world. All the media, all the platforms are already controlled by the Saudis or the Emiratis, or by the Syrian regime, or by the Iranian regime. Only Al Jazeera is trying to push its luck. We're trying to push our luck. Sometimes we even defy the Qatari policy. We push our luck, and we try to be as much as professional as we can, and as much as unbiased and objective as much as we can. And this was not liked by the governments around us and the region, and we were severely attacked. Now, for me, I always told myself, if at a point I cannot be a good journalist and a professional one, even with Al Jazeera, I will resign. But fortunately, Jazeera, you know, they allowed me, or I had this space, this free space where I can be a good journalist, a professional one, like, and following the Western, you know, the Western professional standards. I really I enjoyed being a good journalist among all the rest of the media outlets who cannot do that. I know very good journalists, but they're not allowed in any other media outlet to be objective and unbiased. So basically, this is you know, a quick look at my career, how I was a child, you know, very affected by my father's objectivity towards what was happening around him and the country and even in the region. And then I was a curious child by nature, so my mother encouraged me to go and study journalism. I studied journalism. I liked it and I hated it at the same time. I liked to ask questions, but I hated the answers. And I think this was my problem. I like to ask questions. I hate the answers. Why I hate the answers?
What prompted you to then, because you were personally harassed, what prompted you to do the Washington Post op-ed piece about this, where you said you've talked about the fact that the attacks were so personal and so on. Was there a specific thing that made you decide to go to the Washington Post and do this?
Yes, yes, of course, of course. Yes.
Can you tell us, I'd like to know more about that. I think people are very interested.
So when I you know, I used the term pushing my luck. When I told you I was, I like to ask questions, I hated the answers, not because I want the person to answer the way I like, but because I was searching for the truth, and I wasn't, you know, getting the truth from the answers I had, because the region is full of corruption and dictatorships. So what I've done is that I pushed for more, either during my interviews on Al Jazeera, or I asked lots of questions on my social media, and that triggered the hate towards me from those governments who are dictatorships. And I knew that it will trigger their hate, but I didn't know that they will reach a phase where they will attack my own phone and they will hack my phone. Although I took many measures. I mean, right now, when I'm talking to you, and I know for a fact that they are listening somehow, I don't know why, because I had very safe measures on my phone, and yet they could hack my phone and steal pictures and information, although I don't have secrets. But that was scary, because when you see your own picture on internet and published by pro-Saudi government accounts, or pro-Emirati government accounts, or Egyptian government accounts, that will make you ask questions. Why did they go into my phone, and what do they want? And I remembered when I saw those accounts publishing those pictures with fake stories about me, and I know I received lots of death threats and lots of bullying on my phone, on you know, whether on WhatsApp or on Twitter or on Facebook. But to get into my phone and to steal my phone, and I remember that Jamal Khashoggi, you know, 1 month before they killed him, he sent me a message and he said, I am seeing how they are attacking you and bullying on you on Twitter. Please block them. And because I used to answer, I used to reply, I used to retweet and say, look at this Saudi account, how they are threatening me, how they are talking to me, how they are bullying me. So he sent me a message. He said, oh, don't bother yourself and reply, just block them. So I told him, Jamal, I need to show the world how they are attacking journalists, even virtually. So at that point, it was virtual. So I wasn't that worried. And then when they killed Jamal, and then again when they hacked my phone, that was not anymore virtual. I mean, I'm talking with you right now, and I think they are with us. I use my phone, and whenever I talk on my phone, in my head, I feel that they are with me in the phone, listening to everything after what they did, because, you know, they published many things that they got out from my phone, so I know that they are listening, they read the conversation I had with my colleagues, even with my husband or with my family. They have everything. They have all the photos, all the videos. And the plus, before the hacking, they used to, to do Photoshops. They used to put my head on a naked body. But I used to say, you're strong, Ghada, don't give any importance to this thing, until they got into my phone and they saw those pictures and they started to talk about my family. And I remember Jamal Khashoggi, and I said, this is how it started with him. So they started to annoy him and to bully on him, and then they hacked their phone because they wanted, through Twitter and through their spies in Twitter in New York, they had this opportunity to track him through his phone. So I said, should I say it's only virtual after what they did to Khashoggi and after what we have been reading about spies in Twitter itself to track people and journalists and to know where they are right now in order to send them a team and to assassinate them. At that point, I was like, I talked to my husband, I said, I might be in danger physically, not only virtually. And those pictures are not that important, but the message behind the pictures is important because they used the bones of Jamal Khashoggi in a consulate. I mean, who could have ever imagined that a government can kill a journalist in an embassy or a consulate? It was, crazy. At that point, I was saying to myself, I need a real protection. The world needs to protect me. I'm a journalist. I'm just telling people what's happening. I'm trying to search for the truth. I'm trying to inform people. So people and the world should protect me. So I choose to talk with Western media because this is the free world. I don't live in a free world. I should seek the protection of the free world, the world who respect press freedom, because in the Middle East, the press freedom is really, really, really not safe and is really attacked. And they are doing everything to silence us. And believe me, it's very stressful to be a journalist in the Middle East. I mean, you can come, if you work for New York Times or if you work for The Guardian and you come just for a while to work from the Middle East and you are British or French or American, it's okay. You will see what's happening, you will cover and you go back to your country. But when you are Lebanese or you are Palestinian or Jordanian and you want to work the same way you in Western media work, you will get killed. I mean, look at what's happening in Iraq, look what's happening in Iran, look what's happening in Saudi Arabia to Khashoggi.
How much more of a problem do you see it being as a female journalist? I mean, all journalists are harassed. What particular problem is it in being female?
So if you are a journalist in general, you are harassed, of course, and you are risking your life. If you are a female journalist, that's it. You don't have any chance to survive. They look at you as a weak creature, where they will use all the the sickness in the Arab society to attack you. In this region, in the Middle East, and the Oriental mentality and education, it's very easy to attack women. You can only say that this journalist used to sleep with her boss, or you can say, oh, okay, she's a prostitute, she's a whore, she's a bitch, all this kind of terms and insults, and that will attack your image in front of your audience. So it's the easiest way, because if you want to attack a man, it's not easy like attacking a woman, because of the nature of the societies, of the Arab societies. It's misogyny here is very, very high, because we are under severe dictatorships, either military or religious. And you can imagine when it's a religious dictatorship, what kind of society and mentality it will leave. They will look at women as if she is an inferior creature. They will look at women as if she's only here to get married, have children, and cook, and clean the house. If they see you not veiled and or not married and you're having a career, it's easy to attack you based on that and telling the audience, look at her, she has no husband, nor a father, nor a brother to silence her. So she is someone who has no limits. She is capable of doing everything. And she, you know, in order to say that you are a whore or a prostitute, or they attack you on that level, the sexual level, which is
you talked about that in the letter, in the op-ed itself. You mentioned some of the ways that they were harassing you, and particularly you know, as a female, and the kinds of things that they said. What was the follow-up from this this op-ed that you wrote? What was the response from the public, and then also what was the response from your boss? What was the reaction there?
Well, you know, in Al Jazeera, they were very sorry for me, because they know that I'm paying the price of being a good journalist, and they were supportive. They said, whatever we can do to support you or to protect you, we're not gonna do less than supporting you and protect you, and whatever you need to do, whatever it helps, and we can do it for you, we will do it for you. So, because, you know, we have people who lost their lives in Al Jazeera. I'm not the only one harassed. I lost colleagues. They were killed. I have a colleague who was killed by American bombing in Iraq. He was, you know, just doing his job, just doing a DTL with a camera and a mic, and yet they bombed the building where he was doing his live shot, and we lost him. I have a colleague who is just a producer and a journalist like any other journalist in the world. He's Egyptian. He traveled to Egypt and he just wanted to see his family. The Sisi regime arrested him, and now he is in jail in a very bad condition with COVID-19 and Corona. And even we don't know how, but he broke his arm, and they refused to get him the proper medical equipment to fix his hand. So I'm not the only one harassed, and until now I thank God that I'm only harassed online, and they got into my phone, not into my body, because my colleagues, some of them, they lost their lives. I mean, they killed one cameraman Al Jazeera had in Libya with the bombarding. I have colleagues that they cannot go back to their countries. I have Egyptians colleagues that they cannot come back, otherwise they will end up in jail, just like Mahmoud Hussein, who is now in jail without, they didn't even, you know, finish his, he has no accusation, he's just arrested, just like that, with no legal
can journalists do about this? What do you expect or hope from other journalists around the world?
You know, Stephanie, if we don't have your support, if we don't have the free word support, if we don't have the professional journalists support, we will end up killed. We will end up arrested. We will end up tortured. We will all have the same fate as Jamal Khashoggi had, the same one he had. That is why me and in Al Jazeera, we talk a lot about Jamal Khashoggi, not because only, I mean, for me, I didn't endorse all of his points of view or his political points of view, or I wasn't that, you know, close to him, but whatever he says, whatever he writes, he has the right to say whatever he wants, and you cannot just accept that he is killed because of his opinions. So, and talking about that was not just because we wanted the truth about Jamal Khashoggi, because we wanted to protect also ourselves, because I might get the same, you know, destiny like Jamal Khashoggi. This is why we were telling the world what happened with him, not because we share the same views, but because we can have the same faith like him. And if Washington Post didn't talk about Jamal, nobody would have talked. And even if the Arab media talk about it, it won't talk like Washington. We don't have, you know, that impact because it's a government. It's you cannot, as a journalist or as an individual, face a government. They have tools. We don't have tools. They have army. They have ministers. They have the support even of the United Nations, of the international community. They are legal. I mean, can you imagine being targeted by a legal mafia? Because what they did to Jamal Khashoggi is what a mafia does, not a government normally, you know. But here, the case is very, very scary because it's a government that has the support of the whole world, of the United States, of Europe, and they are after us. So if you have a government supported by Western governments and international community, and this government is after you, you have no way out unless journalists in Western countries can talk and say, hey, stop risking the lives of those journalists. They are just doing what we do here. I'm doing, Jamal and me and any other journalists, we are just doing the same thing that Western journalists, European journalists, American journalists are doing. But we are risking our lives.
Journalists do? What more what more can Western journalists do about this and the Western community?
The Western community, I know for a fact that, you know, in politics, they have no mercy. They're not, you know, the American administration, I know that they won't risk their relations with the Saudi governments just because there are journalists, good journalists in the Middle East that are threatened, or female presenters bullied and harassed. I don't expect from the American government to do anything for me. I expect from journalists in the United States to put pressure and to show the American people what we are going through, so that the American people ask their governments to stop protecting those killers, those dictators in the Middle East who are trying to silence us, because they don't want us to tell the people in the Middle East what their governments are doing. They don't want us to inform people in order for those people to decide what they want in their lives. Who do they want to be governed? They want, if they should, you know, change their way of life and their governments and their leaders. So the American people, the journalists in Western countries should tell people what we are going through, and people should tell their governments, because it's a democratic country. They are democratic countries. You live in a democratic countries. So people should ask their governments to stop protecting and supporting dictatorships, because those dictatorships are risking my life. And if my life is at risk, people, my audience and the people who live in this region, also they will remain, you know, oppressed, poor, and the governments will keep being corrupted, and will keep stealing those people, and will keep them in misery. So I don't think American people would like to see other people living in misery. So I think they refuse this, and in order to make an impact and a change, they need to ask their governments to stop supporting those governments, those corrupted governments in the Middle East. But people need you to tell them to do that, or to show them.
I'd like to take a moment
to ask people. Sorry, but I just need to make sure about one thing. We're not here to change the mind of people or to tell them what to do. We need to show them the truth and what's happening. We need to inform people, and then people can do whatever they want. They can decide whether they want these governments or not, whether to do something or not. I just need you to show people the truth and to help us to show the truth.
What I'd like to see, are there questions from anyone in the audience? And please type them in. And then while we're waiting to see if there are some more outside questions, I wondered, with the pandemic, it seems to have affected everything. What changes do you see because of this pandemic? Has it made things worse in terms of treatment of the press, or has it Is it neutral? What do you see as a result of COVID-19?
COVID-19 was very bad, and it had a bad impact on journalism because of COVID-19, the journalist himself cannot go to the field and cover news. So we get our news through internet, through online, but it's always different between getting your information from talking to people through online or to politicians, rather than going to the field and asking people and see really what's happening. It's like having news from a virtual way, rather than having news from the field itself. The feeling is different, and the angle is larger when it's from the field. So I think this is what COVID-19 did to the journalism, and yet Al Jazeera, for example, we continue to go on the field and to cover the events. Like, for example, while I'm talking to you, my colleague is in Lebanon right now, although Corona is very in a high level in Lebanon right now, but he went there to cover Beirut explosion. So we are risking our lives twice. So if we cover virtually, it won't be enough. If you go on field, you risk your life twice. So my colleague, for example, now, while I'm talking, he's in Beirut, risking his life because Beirut is a very agitated area right now. While he was with me on air, he got a big hit on his head because there were demonstrations. So he was attacked live on air, and I had to say, and I had to let him go to the hospital and then get back to him. He risked his life while covering those demonstrations, and also he risked his life because of what happened in Lebanon, and because of all of this chaos. Corona and COVID-19 is the level is higher, so he has two risks on his life: getting killed with someone in the street, killing him by mistake because there were clashes between people and police, and he was hit, and he was risking his life with Corona, COVID-19. So COVID-19 had added more risk at our lives. And even if I go to only the newsroom in Al Jazeera in Doha, it's also annoying to feel that I will see people, so I might catch COVID-19. So it makes my concentration on my job less, while I need the maximum concentration I can get.
Have you found the governments use COVID to crack down even harder on journalists? I know this is happening some other places in the world. Do you see that happening where you are, that the government is using this as an excuse?
In Lebanon, yes. They really took advantage of Corona, because people were in the streets demonstrating, and they wanted to topple the government and the president, but after Corona it calmed down, the demonstrations calmed down. But now, because of the explosion, they got back to the streets. But yes, the Lebanese government, they took advantage of COVID-19 to calm people. Even in Iraq, it's the same thing. The Iraqi government or the Iraqi authorities, they were using COVID-19, and somehow they were right, because you could not demonstrate in dozens in streets because there is COVID-19. So yes, COVID-19 did a favor to the governments. And I gave you two examples, in Lebanon and in Iraq. So yeah, and even in Egypt, people the government was using COVID-19 to justify their bad behavior in the economic crisis which they are facing. And even the Saudi government, they used COVID-19 to justify the policies, the bad policies, the bad economical policies in front of their people. They said, oh, we lost lots of money, and the money belongs to the people. But they said, we lost this money because of COVID-19. And they refused to admit that MBS economical policy was totally wrong.
Wanted to ask, this is a question that comes up, I think, for each of these talks. This is the final question, unless someone has something else they would like to bring in. But I'd like you to just, our question is, what does press freedom mean to you? If we could just get a few of your comments for that. What does press freedom mean to you?
Civilization, simply. Press freedom equals civilization. There is no civilization if you don't have press freedom. Wherever you don't have press freedom, you don't have, you don't move forward. You don't respect the civility, and you don't. I don't know how to explain it. If you don't have press freedom, you will end up being living just like an animal. It will close down any possibility of thinking. And I think that the difference between an animal and a human being is the fact that we can think. And if you cannot think, you're just an animal. And if you're just an animal, then you're just an animal, you won't achieve anything, because this is the difference between us as creatures in this world. So if you don't have press freedom, you don't have the possibility to think. And if you don't have the possibility to think, you don't have the creativity, you don't have arts, you don't have science, you don't have better life, you don't have literature, you don't have all what human being enjoy in life, and that makes them different than any other creature in this world, in this planet.
You said earlier that you like to ask questions, but you don't like to get the answers. I think we probably don't want to get the answer that what happens without press freedom. But thank you for being here and expressing all these things and talking to us about this. I want to take a...
Actually, I like to have answers, but the answers I'm getting, I don't like. I don't like the answers I'm getting because it's just lies. It's not answers. And a lie is never an answer to me.
Any other questions coming in from any of our participants? I don't see any now. We'll wait a minute and see if someone does, but I wanted to mention that to finish the talks, the series that we do in August, the International Committee is teaming up with the freelance community of SPJ to present a conversation with newly appointed President and Executive Director of the Freelancers Union, Rafay SPL. And that will be August 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The landscape of the gig economy in America is evolving. We will discuss the challenges and the changes taking place in the freelance industry in the US and around the world by providing a chance to talk with this. So thank you very much for being part of this. I really appreciate it, and you taking the time, and I think we've all gotten a lot out of this. I also understand that next week, the International Committee will be making announcements for talks taking place in September, including what they hope is a big surprise and bonus for the delegates to the SPJ 2020 National Online Convention. That's going to be September 12th and 13th, a virtual national conference for the Society of Professional Journalists. So thank you for joining us, and I want to thank everyone who was taking part in this today. This is great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for inviting me in this seminar, and thank you for the listeners and everyone who participated in this. Thank you so much.